What in the world is going on with these planes? Another Boeing airplane caught fire and created panic soon after landing in the Denver airport.
Good. That's quick.
Please do not leave items unattended. Report any unattended.
Everything was fine, but then the minute we landed, it was like smoke started filling the cabin and people started kind of screaming. And
there were 178 people on board, and many of them had to get on one of the wings to escape the inferno as they waited to be rescued.
Yeah, like that. Oh, what happened?
It's on fire.
But that's not the whole story. This wasn't just a case where a plane mysteriously caught fire, and luckily it was on the ground so no one got hurt. This jet was flying from Colorado Springs to Dallas-Fort Worth, and it only landed because the crew felt vibrations in one of the engines.
Boeing 737 landed after crews reported a shaky engine. Now, what the FAA is currently working to investigate is where that fire started, when it started.
This fire could have started while this thing was still in the air with 178 souls on board. Just let that sink in. Basically, we just dodged another bullet, and thank God no one got hurt. And this is where most media channels, if not all of them, will end the story. But I decided to dig deep, and what I found not only made me extremely angry because they are straight up playing with our lives and not even telling us the truth. I'm sure you all know that Boeing came under a firestorm after two of its 737 MAX airplanes went down in 2018 and 2019, ending 346 lives in the process.
Our breaking news: an Ethiopian Airlines flight has crashed shortly after takeoff from Addis Ababa, killing all 157 passengers and crew thought to be on board.
Where a Lion Air jet with 189 people on board fell into the sea minutes after takeoff, leaving no survivors.
Both these crashes were attributed to faulty aircraft design, among other things.
Two major technical issues: a faulty sensor on the plane's nose and, as suspected in both crashes, problems with Boeing's MCAS flight control system.
And while that particular model was grounded, right now more than 4,400 planes in the air belong to the Boeing 737-800 series. And that is the airplane that just caught fire due to engine issues. But this problem is not new. In fact, only last year, another 737-800 aircraft lost its engine cover while taking off from the Denver airport.
Another scary moment for passengers on board a Boeing plane. This time, an engine's cover came apart shortly after takeoff.
Camera the moment the engine cover of a Southwest flight tore away during takeoff.
Another Boeing jet of the same model had its engine catching fire in Australia as well, and that also happened just last year.
Good evening. A frightening experience for nearly 200 Qantas passengers today, with an engine failure at takeoff, forcing their aircraft to make an emergency landing at Sydney Airport.
And as if that wasn't enough already, the airplane that crashed in South Korea was also a Boeing 737-800 aircraft.
Video shows the moment the Jeju Airlines passenger jet touched down in Muon, South Korea, the belly of the jet skidding on the tarmac before it slams into a concrete wall, exploding into a fireball.
179 people died in that crash. Now look, I'm not saying all these plane crashes are exclusively caused by Boeing's faulty design, but we also just don't know because the company has a history of keeping investigators in the dark.
Back in 2012, Boeing started removing inspection operations off their jobs. So it left the mechanics to buy off their own work. My concerns are with the 737 and the 787.
Dude, the Boeing whistleblower just turned up not alive. You know how Boeing's planes have been falling apart mid-air for the last year, like doors coming off, tires falling off mid-flight? Well, it turns out that this guy, John Barnett, who spent almost a decade as the quality manager for a plant making the 787 Dreamliner, one of the problem childs of Boeing, well, he retired in 2017, and he's been taking legal action against them ever since.
Paid for transparency? Is that one of the metrics for your income?
I think the board counts on me for transparency.
Really? Because you're under investigation for falsifying 787 inspection records. The Boeing's under criminal investigation for the Alaska Airlines flight. You were investigated by DOJ for criminal conspiracy to defraud the FAA. This is all in your tenure. This doesn't sound like a lot of transparency to me.
So I'm pretty much done at this point. The liberal media keeps reminding us that these aviation incidents are happening more frequently under Donald Trump, which is just straight up propaganda. But that's exactly why I hope the president starts a full-on investigation to tell us what the hell is going on in our skies. Now, while we're on the subject of skies, Ron DeSantis came under fire for what's happening in the Florida skies.
Hey, Governor DeSantis. Today, when I got up in St. Petersburg, it was clear blue sky, and I started watching all the planes spraying. Now, I know the FAA knows who's flying. I'm pretty sure the governor can figure out who's flying and spraying and creating these fake clouds in the sky. Look. I even got footage of that plane spraying. So, Governor of Florida and Florida officials, what are we doing about this? And why don't you start explaining exactly what it is? Clear blue sky, look at all the lines from the planes. I watched them all, and some of them stop spraying after a while and they restart. Can we have an explanation and a stopping of this, please?
Look, the man's not wrong. Florida senators have been telling their people that they're going to put an end to all this geoengineering.
Because I just have a feeling that, somewhere down the road, and whether that down the road is 1 year, 5 years, or 20 years down the road, we're going to find out that some of the chemicals that they were using for this was harmful to us. And we're going to look back at this time and say, it's probably thankful that we stopped the practice, or at least attempted to stop the practice in Florida. So I'm with you. I am a yes, and I'd like to see it continue going forward.
And yet, so far, they haven't been able to pass the bill. I know this kind of stuff takes time, but haven't we had enough of this bullshit already? Let's clean up our skies before we get hit by yet another once-in-a-lifetime storm. Now, moving on, I want to talk about another story that no mainstream channel would touch with a 10-foot pole. And this one is so messed up that I had to double-check that I wasn't reading a bogus article. It all begins with this Wall Street Journal article that explains how Biden had been using our money to pay mortgages for millions of people who bought a house they can't afford. And it's all thanks to the controversial policies of the Federal Housing Administration, better known as the FHA. Now, initially, this agency was set up so people with low income and bad credit could get a loan for a house. Sounds like a good idea, but keep in mind, this loan is guaranteed by the federal government. Now, the program already has some sketchy regulations. For instance, you only had to pay 3.5% up front, and you could get a loan even with a very high debt-to-income ratio. But once again, this could help families get into homes, so no one batted an eye. However, this all changed in 2020 when Joe Biden started paying the private lenders from our tax dollars to make sure no house was foreclosed on. This basically means that if you have an FHA loan, you can miss your mortgage payments for multiple months and no one can kick you out of that house. And every time you miss a payment, the company that gave you the loan receives a hefty sum from the federal federal government. And the homeowner faces no repercussions for missing payments because the mortgage balance goes up, but the interest stays the same. So basically, the banks give loans to people who cannot afford them and get paid when those people miss payments. You tell me if that doesn't sound shady as hell. What's scary is that more than 52,000 of these loans went seriously delinquent last year, but only 9 faced foreclosure. And in the process, the lenders received nearly 557,000 payments from the federal government for their services. And many of these big lenders like Rocket Mortgage or PennyMac are controlled by guess who? That's right, BlackRock and Vanguard. And right now, they're keeping 8.5 million homes off the market because they keep getting their service fees and their loans keep going up. And that's why we see housing prices and rents go up. It's also why we see videos like this one more and more often.
I'm here because my biggest problem is rent and the increase in it. And I want to bring it out because I need it to change. I get only $1,639 a month. My rent is $1,574 a month, and that leaves me $65. And I have a food card that's TANF, and I get money there, which I add to it to pay my bills. I barely make it month to month. This is not fair, and they're going to have more homeless because they're seniors who live on fixed income and cannot afford this. And they need to be more secure. And so this needs to change. That needs to be the rent increases decrease. They are given it by the governor that they can up it 10% every year. And that has to stop. That has to change to 0 because people cannot afford that.
It's a shameful system, my friends, and it's crystal clear that we're not part of this game. We're going to end today's video right there. Tell me, what do you think about this Boeing situation? Why do you think they keep getting away with it? Share your thoughts with everyone in the comments below. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on the next video.